Welcome back. In this video, we're going to be exploring variables, one of the most fundamental concepts in programming. Variables allow us to store information, manipulate data, make our programs more dynamic and interactive. I'm going to cover what variables are, the different data types, performing basic mathematical operations, and I'll have some code you can practice on and challenge yourself at the end as well. So what are variables? A variable is like a labeled box, a container that holds a value. This value can change as the program runs. While you're running the program, you can add to a variable, change a variable, even completely wipe a variable if you wanted to. Here's an example of a variable. For example, I'm going to write hero name equals Black Panther. Now we've stored hero name inside, we stored Black Panther inside hero name. And this will be a string variable as it's text. We can see that it's text because it has speech marks around it. I'm now going to output the contents of hero name. Be mindful that you need to make sure that the variable name is exactly how you named it previously, otherwise you'll get an error. And here we go, we've stored text inside hero name, and the text was Black Panther, and we've outputted the contents of the variable using the print function and the name of the variable. Remember to use the correct syntax using brackets. Print needs to be always lowercase, and then you can see at the bottom here the contents of hero name was outputted. Now I'm going to create a second variable. I'm going to call it hero age equals 41. And then I'm also going to use the print function to output the contents of hero age. I've not spelled the variable name correctly here on purpose to see what the message will be at the bottom here. Again, it does not know what age is. See, there's an error. This is a syntax error. It does not know what age is because we've misspelt it. Again, this is a syntax error. We need to make sure whenever we use a variable name and we later on use that variable name and reference it, it is correctly spelled. Now I fixed it, it works perfectly fine. Also, you can see that this number, I put the age as 41, does not have speech marks around it. This tells Python that this is an integer, a number variable. It's a whole number, 41, and this is how we store numbers. We don't put speech marks around it, and it tells Python that we are using numbers. If you're following along, how about you create some additional hero names or change hero name here and the age and output it yourself. And maybe purposely make some mistakes, get rid of the brackets, change the variable names by accident, and see what happens. Again, I've emphasized in the first video that with Python and all programming, experimenting, seeing what happens, that's the way you learn. You should be experimenting and trying things out as you go along. Okay, I'm going to add a third variable. I'm going to call it speed equals 120.5. So now I've used a decimal. This data type is a floating point where you can store decimal numbers. Also going to do another variable called can fly equals false. This is a boolean variable type where you can only store true or false. So the four types we've used so far. a text variable using speech marks, Black Panther, a integer whole number only, where I've stored hero age 41, and I've also done speed 120.5, a decimal number or floating point, or sometimes called real. I've also done a boolean variable type, and you can store true and false. I'm now going to put a hashtag in front of line 2 here, and you can see the color changes. Different IDEs, different websites and platforms have different color coding, but in this one looks like a light bluish. I'm also gonna hashtag at the front here. This is called commenting. Hashtag in Python comments out code that you don't want to run, or you can use it to add titles. For example, I'm going to put a title here, hero code, and this will not affect the output or the program at all. So hashtags are used to add comments which will not affect the program, and is useful for adding titles, comments, and commenting out text or lines of code that you don't want to run currently. I'm now going to output these variables on a single line. You don't need to output them all on separate lines one by one. For example, I'm going to write hero name, and then I'm going to put a comma. This separates the variables. Put hero age. Again, be careful that you're writing the variable names exactly how you've written them previously. And I'm going to purposely here misspell or use a capital C for can fly to see what happens. This gives us a syntax error again. This is because capitalization in variable names matters. If you used a lowercase c previously, you need to use the same capitalization throughout your program. Now I fixed it. I'm going to run it again. Now all 4 variables output on the same line using one print statement, using the comma between the variables. I did want to mention variable name rules. Python has rules for variable names. Most languages have some sort of rules. For example, a variable name cannot start with a number, such as one name equals John, print one name. It will give us an error because a variable cannot start with a number. You can have numbers at the end, can have numbers in the middle. That is perfectly fine. And that will not give us a syntax error. That is perfectly fine. Other rules are you cannot have spaces in a variable. You cannot have special symbols other than underscore. Underscores are allowed. And you cannot use reserved words in Python. For example, class is a reserved word, all lowercase in Python, and it will give us an error. So make sure to follow the basic rules. Cannot start with a number, cannot have any special symbols other than underscore, cannot have spaces, and cannot use reserved words. The next thing I wanted to talk about is performing maths with variables. I'm going to show this table here. So we've got the basic mathematical operators that everyone should be familiar with: plus, minus. Times in Python and most programming language is using the asterisk. If you look on the keyboard, Shift 8, or on the right, there should be an asterisk symbol. Division is done using slash, so it's pretty simple. And the 3 that you might not be familiar with is floor division. This is done using slash slash. What that does, it gives us how many times a number is divided into another number. For example, if I did 100 // 10, so 100 floor division 10, how many times does 10 fit into 100 without any remainders? So that would be 10. And the next one is modulus. This gives us the remainder. For example, 10 mod 7 will give us 3 remainder. 7 goes into 10 and the remainder is 3. The output will be 3. And the last thing, power of. So this gives us 2 to the power of 3. 2 times 2 times 2. And that's how you do the power of slash star star. Okay, so let's do some examples. For example, if I'm just going to hashtag comment this line out, then I'm going to do print hero age plus 10. Basically adds 10 to hero age. It was 41, adds 10. Fairly simple. Let's do speed. So print speed slash, which is divide by 5. Run that out. 24.1. As it's already a decimal point number, the output will be decimal, a float. Let's do a modulus. So if I did print hero age percentage, how many times does 10 go in there, and it would output the remainder. So hero age, 10 goes in there 4 times and the remainder will be 1, and the output is 1. Finally, do one more example. Print speed slash floor division. So this, or sometimes called integer division, this tells us how many times a number fits into another number. So speed is 120. How many times does 20 fit into speed? Let's have a output 6 times. Because the original data type was a float, the output is a floating point, a decimal number. One feature I want to talk about in Simple Python editor is multi-line commenting. So for example, if you wanted to comment out all of these variables in one go, instead of doing it, putting hashtag 1 by 1, you can highlight and do Control / on your keyboard, and will comment out all 4 of those lines of code. And to undo that is pretty simple. Highlight again, Control / again. Pretty useful feature. Speeds up commenting code that you don't want to run at this time. You want to do something else. So I'm going to comment it out again. And now I'm going to showcase concatenation. Concatenation is a way of combining different strings together. So I'm going to combine, for example, the hero's name with some other text. I'm going to do print hero name plus, I'm going to write some text, is the best. So the plus concatenates 2 strings together. Run this code. There we go. It outputs the variable hero name plus is the best. Issue you might come across is that you can't concatenate a text with a number. So I'm going to purposely do a mistake here. I'm going to do hero age plus, so hero name plus hero age. And we're trying to concatenate a string, which is clearly speech marked, and then a whole number, 41 hero age together. When you run it, it gives us an error. It says cannot concatenate string and int. Now, a trick to bypass this issue is to cast the variable, which is convert this number into a string. To do that, I'm going to put str, which is short for string, around hero age. Now it's got a text, and I converted using casting to convert this number, a whole number, integer number, into a string. And there we go, it works. Black Panther 41. There was no space there. We can add a space by using an additional concatenation plus. Now we've got space. We can do as many strings as we want. So I'm going to put plus also the speed. Again, this is a floating point number, a decimal number. It's going to give us an error. You cannot combine. I'm going to fix it with using the trick of casting it into a string using str, open bracket. Whenever you use an open bracket, make sure to close it with a closing bracket. Run code, and here we go. It added the speed at the end. Again, there is no space, so I'm going to add another concatenation with plus. So you can concatenate multiple strings, even numbers, using the string function, and it will output it together. Okay, let's recap what we've covered so far. A variable is somewhere you can store information. It can change as you run the program. I've showcased a string variable where you can store text, numbers, combination of text and numbers, and it needs speech marks around whatever text you're storing. I've used integer, a whole number. You can store whole numbers inside a variable. A floating point, or sometimes called real, a decimal number that can be stored in a variable, and a boolean variable which can store true or false. You can output all of these variables using the comma next to each other, and you can manipulate these variables after the program is run by using the mathematical operators. These are the mathematical operators I've showcased. Here we've added 10, divided, mod, floor division. We can also concatenate using plus, and you can only concatenate text. So when you do a number you want to concatenate, you must use the string function to convert it, or sometimes called casting, a type, converting it into a string variable. This will allow you to concatenate multiple string and numbers together, because everything's been converted to string. Now, practice on your own. Create more superhero profiles. Yeah, so different hero names, strength level, speed, whether they can fly, and any other types you can think of. Maybe health, MP, magical power, how many enemies they have. Well, whichever variable types, you need to experiment and practice creating variables. Do some calculations, double the strength, reduce it by half, square it, and then output as much as you can using concatenate or individually. Practice as much as you can. I would practice as each of the mathematical operators, the power of, mod, floor division, division. Practice each of them as much as you can, and the more you practice, the more you learn, and the more you'll understand. Thank you for watching. Next video coming soon.